Hello, everybody, and welcome. We still have a number of people who are joining the webinar, so please stand by. We will begin momentarily. Again, hello, everybody. As I mentioned, we still have a number of people who are joining the webinar, so please stand by. We'll begin in just a minute or so. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's program, an exclusive insider's look behind the SEO and web development curtain. I'm glad you could join us today. My name is Bruce Markowitz. I'll be your host for today's program. And before we begin, I'd just like to take care of just a few pre-conference notes. Now, please note that at any time, we encourage you to submit questions for our panel, and we'll be doing a Q&A at the very end of the program. In order to submit a question, simply click on the Zoom Q&A icon and then type your question in and make sure you click the send button. Again, we'll get to as many of your questions today as possible, but we encourage you to ask your questions throughout the course of today's presentations. As a reminder, the volume for today's program is controlled by your computer system. And lastly, your microphone and webcams will be disabled throughout today's program. We have an esteemed set of presenters for us today, and each one will be giving a little bit of an overview and presentation, but at the end, they'll all be coming back on and doing a panel discussion, answering your questions, as well as other questions that were submitted prior to the conference. So with that, let's get started. And first, I'd like to introduce Eric Enge. Eric is president of Pilot Holding. Previously, Eric was the founder and CEO of Stone Temple, an award-winning digital marketing agency, which was acquired by Proficient in 2018. He is the lead co-author of The Art of SEO, a 900-page book that is known in the industry as the Bible of SEO. In 2016, Eric was awarded Search Engine Land's Landy Award for Search Marketer of the Year and US Search Awards Search Personality of the Year. He is a prolific writer, researcher, teacher, and sought-after keynote speaker and panelist at major industry conferences. So with that, we're honored to have Eric with us today. And Eric, the floor is now yours.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Appreciate the nice introduction. And hello, everybody. Looking forward to talking to you about this today. And what I really want to get at with this talk is why it's so important that you understand what it is that Google is trying to accomplish and how it impacts your SEO strategy, really, and the actions you can take to benefit from having that understanding. So with that, let me dive right in. And I'm going to start by just sharing a tweet that was done by Danny Sullivan, who's an important person within the Google infrastructure, in particular communicating to webmasters and publishers of websites like all of us. And it was a response to one of Google's algorithm updates. They always get thousands of questions from people wanting to know, well, why am I being impacted? How can you explain what happened to my site and what can I do to do better? And, and here's his response, basically it comes down to have great content. Then he says, yeah, the same boring answer. Well, that's because they've been saying the same thing. Google has been saying the same thing for almost 2 decades. And this is really a key thing to internalize. But I want to talk about it from another perspective here, which is what is it really that the user wants, Google's user wants? And it always kind of comes down to the same thing. Give me what I want fast. That's what they're looking for. People don't go to Google with an expectation that they're going to get entertained for hours on end or spend a long time on the site. They're not looking for Google to be the in-depth resource on a wide variety of topics. So this is what it comes down to. Google's job, if they want to have a large market share, is to give the user what they want quickly. So what this makes Google at the end of the day is to get users what they want fast engine. This simple chart is meant to express the concept here that the faster they do at getting users what they want, the more usage of their service and revenue that they ultimately get. So this mentality and their success in understanding that this is the way the world works and this is how they should address it has led to extraordinarily high satisfaction rates. I mean, think about this. Google at some level, and they might not like this description, it's a little bit like a utility, right? It's like so many of us, and the great majority of us, use it as our tool for searching. So it has that same level of ubiquity that you would expect of an electric company or a cable company or something like that, an internet service provider, I guess they could say. And all of those other kinds of companies I enumerated typically have satisfaction rate, often calculated through Net Promoter Score, that's negative, whereas Google has this extraordinarily high user satisfaction rate, hovering in and around 80% without a break since 2002. So that's just extraordinary. And the result is, we all know this. I mean, Google is the dominant player. Of course, there's some countries where that's not explicitly true. So it's not true in China and Russia, for example, Czechoslovakia and other, Korea. But pretty much everywhere else, Google's the dominant player. And this is the outcome of this great focus they've had on giving the user what they want fast. So keeping that in mind, I want to hit this first concept for you, which is that technical SEO, the part of making sure that Google can crawl your website and find your web pages, it's really important, but it is just table stakes. If you don't get your tech SEO, it's a little bit like trying to play in poker game without anteing. No one will deal you the cards, so you're just not a part of the competition, as it were. But if your tech SEO is correct, it now enables you to compete with the rest of your site, and in particular, the quality of the content and how users respond to it. That's really what drives SEO rankings. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But essentially, tech SEO opens the door to getting the most out of the existing content already on your site. And it also enables the rapid discovery, indexation, and ranking of new pages or new content that you create. So I'm not trying to minimize the importance of technical SEO here. You must get this right. It's just important that we all understand that it's just like paying the entry fee into the competition. And then you have to do the right things to win. So ultimately, a lot of times people will ask me, what are the most important ranking factors? And the ones that carry the most weight are the relevance and quality of your content. You're not going to get Tupperware content to rank for a used car query, regardless of anything else you do, right? So the relevance has to be there in order to be able to rank. But so does the quality, and Google uses a number of signals to try to measure quality. But basically, if you don't have content relevant to the user query, you're not going to rank for that query. It's that simple. So Google goes through a number of processes to try to continuously improve their ability to understand two things: what users mean by a query, and also what pages best serve that. And so here's a list of some of the updates that they've done all the way back into 2018. So there's this process of where they release these periodic major algorithm updates, which my belief is that these are now today largely AI and machine learning driven in terms of continuous improvement process that they go through to drive the the quality of their search results. So as I said a moment ago, what they're trying to do with all of these updates, better understand the query intent and better understand which websites fully meet that user intent, but also address the next few questions. And this is another important concept in understanding what happens on the web today. A journey rarely has one single step where someone does one query, they come to your website and they convert and they're done. And yes, that does happen sometimes, but most user journeys have many different steps in them. So given this, though, given what Google's focus is, we have to really follow along with them and have the same focus. Our job, if we're interested in ranking in organic search and increasing our SEO traffic, is to give users what they want from a relevance and quality perspective. And our job is also to understand that the user journey, as I've already suggested, is rarely one and done. It's very common that the user will have many steps, and we need to be prepared to service the user through those many steps, and ideally have that content ready and available for them upon their first visit to our site. So what makes this more interesting is the way the great majority of people think about SEO is, well, what are the big terms that I want to rank for? So if I was a digital camera reviews site, I might want to rank for the term digital camera reviews, and okay, duh, yes, I want to rank for that. But it turns out that those really big terms, the ones that I might think of for my business off the top of my head like that, it turns out to be not the great majority of overall search traffic. There's another concept of slightly longer phrases that we call the chunky middle. And then there is yet another concept called the long tail. And this long tail of search might be queries that are 5 and 7 words long, or just have very low search volume because they're rare, but they make up 35% of all the search queries. And because they are more specific, they're often higher converting. They may also make up 50% of your potential conversions. So you ignore this portion of the keyword space, if you will, at your peril. And just to underscore this data point a little more, as I show here on the bottom left of this slide, note that 15% of the queries that Google sees every day, it is seeing for the first time ever, the first time in its entire history. So that just tells you how fractured user search behavior actually is. Google actually has a white paper, by the way, where they go into this, not exactly the same way I did, but this idea of complex user journeys. And they have a concept I refer to as the messy middle. The journey typically starts with some trigger. You just discovered you have diabetes, or discovered that a loved one has diabetes. And that triggers a journey. But then typically there are many exploration and evaluation loops that go back and forth before the user makes some sort of decision, potentially leading to some level of purchase. So again, getting back to that complexity of the user journey. Just sharing another data point here. This is from a company called Bloomreach that is very active and offers a platform to help optimize your websites in the for SEO. And they did their own survey of user behavior, and they found for consumer users that 82% of their time was spent, searching and browsing, Whereas for B2B buyers, it was a little lower, but it was still at 76% of their time. Just another data point, just to give some numerical aspect to the complexity of that user journey comment that I made. So the thing that I would really like you all to think about is, what percentage of users do you satisfy? And, by the way, if you satisfy 60% of the users to your site, that's actually not bad. But just realize that if your competition satisfies 70%, in principle, Google is going to want to rank them higher. It may actually be hard for them to measure that, but they sure are trying. So just be aware. And here's just another way to think about it. An example, let's imagine a user does a query around a Ford Focus. What do they really want? Well, do they want the sedan or the hatchback or the electric or any of these other models? And oh gosh, if they're thinking about a used car, then things like the year of the car and the mileage matters. And then when they're done with all that, they're not making any purchases until they work out, what they want in terms of seat warmers and, aluminum wheels and, have a live streaming service, music streaming service in it, and lane detection and backup camera. And all these things end up becoming actually real considerations before they buy. So I think this example that we're all familiar with around buying a car, got to apply that same mentality and realize the same complexity is there for users buying whatever it is that we're selling. So ultimately, one way that Google tries to think about this and improves what they're doing is they look at, entities. So an entity might be a person, might be a place, or a college, in this case, Queen's University or University of Pennsylvania, might be a company, it might be a plant. I mean, these are all examples of entities, things, or people, things. But what Google tries to do is, for each type of entity out there, is understand the relationships they have with other entities. And this is what they refer to as an entity map. This is a key part of what Google does to better understand content quality. If you do a good job in your entity map of covering a topic broadly and deeply, they'll see that because you refer, let's say you are writing about Elon Musk, now you actually refer to his relationship in all these other areas and others that I don't have here. So that's a key concept that they also think a lot about. As I said, it helps them better understand relevance and quality. And also, if you get a link from a site that's closely related to Elon Musk, in my example, and they might score that link as having more value in terms of being an endorsement for your site. We also have the concept of expertise, authority, and trust. This is another major concept that Google pushes and tries to understand. Try to understand the expertise of the content creator, the authoritativeness of the website, and the trustworthiness of the creator of the website and the publisher, which kind of relates to what are your motives? I mean, are you really there to serve users or not? So just a brief overall illustration of expertise, authority, and trust, the kinds of things that Google thinks about in each of these areas. But the bottom line is it's about the quality of your content, whether or not you have the authority to really be writing about that, and are you using the right kind of writers. Always use subject matter experts to write. And then trust, disclose whatever your advertising practices or whatever it is you're trying to sell. Don't be over aggressive in your sales and how you put advertising on your site. So ultimately, what content does for SEO is establishes the relevance to different queries. Remember, relevance was ranking factor number one, and it enables Google to measure the quality, which is also part of ranking factor number one. It competes for buyer attention across the customer journey. It builds trust, drives conversion, and ultimately, because it does these four things, this is why Google uses content as really one of the core aspects of how they determine what to rank you for and how highly to rank you. So content, just some background data here from a company called Conductor. Consumers who read an educational piece of content were 48% more likely to buy from a brand later. So that's just supporting that they build that trust. Also applies in the B2B world, where content is a major factor, especially in today's world, where B2B buyers are moving more towards wanting to be in self-service model. And I just want to wrap this up with a quick case study. A company called Addiction Center. They're in the addiction treatment market. It's an extremely competitive market. And just highlighting the number of pages that they update and publish by year. And you see that they're adding 2021 and 2022, just shy of 800 pages a year. That's a lot of content to be adding. But the reason why they're doing this is they've understood that covering all the different aspects of the user journey requires a depth of content. And the result is that they're getting fantastic SEO results. This is data from a company called SEMrush here, showing the growth of their traffic over time. And they've become one of the top 2 or 3 sites in the entire addiction treatment space from, not even really being in the space in early 2015. And it's interesting when you look a little deeper, you'll see that the great majority of their content that's ranking and driving traffic is what I'd call evergreen article content. They certainly have the commercial pages, of course, on their site, but that evergreen article content is what's creating most of that visibility for them. So ultimately, that high quality content, here's an example piece of content from them about a drug called Halcyon, is a major driver of that visibility. And interestingly enough, a lot of the content they publish, nearly half, is for topics that get relatively low search volume, less than 100 searches a month. So you'd ask, why did they create it? And the answer ultimately is because they have this content that addresses the long tail of search. It actually helps them rank for queries across the entire spectrum of all their content. So the key characteristics of winning content strategies have to deliver value to the user, thorough topic coverage, high quality, and accurate, of course. I didn't mention it, but interlinking within the body of the article and the content is actually really important. You have to promote it effectively, including outreach to media and influencers. And then I also advise, I didn't cover this in detail, but I'll just mention it as a parenthetical, if you will. I prefer publishing in a content hub and not a blog because it does a better job of giving visibility to Google. So with that, thank you for letting me talk to you and look forward to the rest of today's session.
Eric, thanks so much. Before you go, I want to thank you for the presentation, but I also want to just take a quick moment. We've had some great questions coming in, and let's just propose one question here. One of the people are asking, is there such thing as too much content?
Great question. Yes. And really the main thing I want to say to that, Bruce, is even though I'm arguing for publishing a lot of content because the long tail of search is so wide and varied and could be hundreds or thousands of pieces of content, you don't want to simply spew content out there. You really have to be addressing actual user needs, has to be quality content created by subject matter experts. And you have to create it with care for the users and wanting to build that relationship with them. So yes, there can be too much content. Focus on the quality while you're doing it. Great.
Well, Eric, as I said, there's a bunch of other questions that are coming in. We'll address more at the Q&A panel at the end. And again, we encourage everyone to submit their questions again throughout the course of today's program. So with that, let's move on. Our next presenter is Brian Teeman. And Brian is the co-founder of Joomla and a regular contributor to the development of the Joomla platform, especially the latest release of 4.0. For the past 15 years, he has been an active presenter and teacher on how to use Joomla. For many years, discussion has been around responsive web design, the ability to have one website, on any device. Well, today, Brian is going to be discussing responsible web design, and that's the ability for everyone to use the website equally. So with much time, we spend entirely too much time optimizing our sites for devices, and we should really be optimizing them for people. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. I think we might have some challenges with his camera today, but Brian, are you there with us?
I am.
Excellent.
Did the camera just go again?
The camera just went out, but we do hear you. So with that, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you and for your presentation. So thank you very much.
Okay, so sorry about the camera, guys. Thanks very much for inviting me to speak today. As Bruce said, for the last 3 or 4 years, as well as working with Joomla, I've been mainly working on website accessibility. But today, I wanted to talk about something different, and yet at the same time, exactly the same. Now, when I talk about website accessibility, what I'm talking about there are things keyboard navigation, image descriptions, and that's very relevant to being a responsible web designer, but that's only part of it. Today I want to talk more about accessibility in a truly global sense. So when we talk about accessibility, 1 billion people, 15% of the world's population, according to the American Disability Act, are classified as disabled. A person with a disability is a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity. So I'm not just talking, though, about those people. I'm talking about everybody. 8 billion people in the world. We're not just talking about making the websites usable for them. I want to make sure that they are usable to everybody, everywhere, and however they connect to the internet. So this really is accessibility in a true. Now, as Bruce mentioned in the introduction, responsive design, which was first begun by Ethan Marcotte in about 2011, if I remember correctly. And it's fair to say we've all adopted that. Well, almost all of us. The concept of ensuring that our website looks great on any device, we've got that. But responsible web design is so much more. Now, some of you may be familiar with this image. It's a classic image showing the difference between equality and equity. But this is my version for the web. Regular web design. Everyone gets to see the same website, but because of inequality, not everyone gets a good experience. Now, with responsive web design, you've made changes and optimizations to the website to try and make the experience similar on every device. But what I really want to do is responsible web design, where I'm removing the barriers or fences, if you like, that are faced between people and your content, so that everybody gets the same great experience. For too many years as web designers, we've concentrated on building and optimizing websites for devices. We need to think beyond that desktop and craft designs that respond to your users' needs, no matter how large or small the display. So adopting responsible design will change all of that. And we need to stop building for the devices and start building for people. After all, it's people that buy the goods on our websites. It's people that read the news. It's people that share opinions. And it's people that use the web as the source of information. So just before, we heard about the ways we can optimize our content on our websites for the index of the web, Google. Allocate considerable parts of your budget to search engine optimization. And some of you may even work to ensure that your site satisfies the requirements of accessibility. But as a responsible web designer, it's not stop there. Have you considered the cost of your website to your users, readers, and customers? What do I mean? The content on my website is free. There is no cost. And that is the greatest lie that has ever been told. The internet is not free. We pay for every byte of data that we download. We pay for the device that accesses the internet. We pay to upgrade those devices to more powerful ones. We pay for the electricity that powers or charges the device. And ultimately, we pay for the damage generating that power and mining the rare earth minerals that go into our devices. So as a responsible web designer, what can we do to change this, or at least minimize the web? Well, the first thing is my colleague Bruce Lawson says, you can't do it all in one day, but every little fix makes it better for somebody. This is a photo from Unsplash, which I downloaded earlier today. And I'm sure you know that one of the most important parts in any search engine optimization strategy, as well as the content, is loads quickly. And there's many ways to do that. And one of the first and most common things to look at in terms of your size of your website is the number of bytes that are downloaded. In 2022, the HTTP archive said that the average web page was 2.2 megabytes in size. That may not seem a lot to you, but every byte takes time to download and costs your users money. Now, the first thing I would suggest to resolve that is to start serving your images in the most optimized formats, both in terms of size and technology. Here we can see this image from Unsplash. The one on the left is the one I downloaded, 674K JPEG. The one on the right is one I converted to use WebP, which is a relatively new image compression software. It's supported by all browsers now. And as you can see, that's 283K. That's about a third of the size. So by doing that, you're transferring less data. You're making the website pages load quicker. Now, I'm not suggesting that you remove images. That would be silly. And I don't think I'd ever be invited to speak at a web conference ever again. I'm just saying, use the right image for the task. So how much does the internet cost? Well, Brian Cox, the astrophysicist, says that the crayon is easier for you to understand. So that's what I'm going to do. Cable.co.uk do a survey every year of mobile data, amongst other things. And the cheapest place in the world for mobile data is Israel at 4 cents per gigabyte, closely followed by India at 17 cents, and then the UK at 79 cents. Then we get to Argentina and Sweden, about $1.50. Surprisingly, Germany at $2.67 per gigabyte is one of the most expensive in Europe. And now we get to the, which comes in at an average of $5.6 per gigabyte of mobile data. So every little bit you save on that image really does make a big difference. William Gibson, the author and futurologist, famous science fiction writer, says that the future's here. It's just not evenly distributed. And we saw that in those last few statistics. The cost of accessing the internet using a mobile device drastically dependent on where you live. But it's not just about the cost of the data, the type of device that you're using. Well, as web designers, we probably all own the very latest Android or iPhone. But 49% of iPhone users in the world are not using the latest version. And for Android users, it's worse. It's over 75%. Now, that's just for the operating system, because that's the only statistics that we can get. But it probably means that they're all using older phones with less powerful processors. And surprisingly, processors do matter even for the web. So 75% of all websites use jQuery. And it's been a good solution, but maybe not anymore. You may have spotted Bootstrap no longer uses jQuery. Joomla as a CMS no longer uses jQuery. The UK government have changed all their websites to drop jQuery. But why? It's only 88 kilobytes. So it's not a big download, not like that image. But when you compare its performance to native, or sometimes called vanilla JavaScript, that is part of your web browser already, you really start to see the difference. So this is you can see here a short script just to show the difference between the same function with native vanilla JavaScript and with jQuery. Now I ran this on my computer, and as you can see, it took 1.85 milliseconds for native and a massive 8.3 for jQuery. Now, it will vary from device to device, but the ratio will be about the same. But the percentage change could even be more than that. So, do you really need jQuery on your site to do something? You probably don't. If you go to this website, it's going to give you all the little bits of vanilla JavaScript you can use to hide that div, or to show that div, or to toggle a button. It's a lot quicker and a lot less CPU intensive to use vanilla JavaScript than it is to use jQuery. So before I come to an end, native JavaScript and images in the best formats and an accessible website that you've built according to HTML standards are just part of the journey to becoming a responsible web designer. If we all spent the same amount of time on doing the right thing as we do on SEO, the world would be a much better place. Now I'm going to leave you with a challenge. It's your homework, if you like. If you have a Domino's pizza near you, go to their website from your computer to order a pizza without using your keyboard. And if Domino's in your country is anything like Domino's in mine, you'll find that you'll be going hungry tonight. To conclude, anybody can make the web, but we can all make the web better. We can make it better for everybody. With that, I would say thank you for your time. Apologies for my camera. I bet it's going to come back on as soon as I stop this. And over to you, Bruce.
Great, Brian. Thanks so much. And actually, Brian, before you go and before you mute, and we go on to our next presenter, I want to thank you for your presentation. Look at that. There you are.
As if by magic I appeared.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, thanks again for a great presentation. Again, questions are coming in. I want to pose at least one to you right now before we move on. It's a pretty good question. how can I convince my boss or developer to be a responsible web developer?
This is the challenge. This is the bit where your boss says, but it's going to cost me more money, or it's going to be harder to do, or various factors like that. And of course, bosses always look at the bottom line. So what you have to tell them is, it might take me a day more than it would have done before. Only a day, it's a small amount, but the return on that investment will be multiplied enormously. As I say, check out Domino's Pizza. If you can't order a pizza without using your keyboard, with only using your keyboard, that will tell you the value of spending that one extra day on your website. Being a responsible web developer will give you.
Great. Brian, again, thank you so much. Brian will be back for the panel discussion at the end of our presentations. But with that, we want to continue moving on with our presenters for today. And our next presenter is Philip Walton. And Philip started building computers at an early age and moved on to coding. He formed SoftForge over a decade ago and has been growing year over year. SoftForge clients have included Shell, the NHS, and most recently the United Kingdom Police, as well as others. With a keen interest in science, Phil has patented many inventions, has built telescopes, and has just really explored a lot of different unique avenues in his career. So with that, Phil, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the talks that we've had, because they've all touched on interesting and different areas. And I'm going to go back to SEO, and I really want to talk about using something like Scala hosting to give you and Joomla to give you the opportunity to get a really fast loading website and some amazing SEO. So a little bit about me. I started SoftForge in 2008, and back then I was doing handwritten CMS of my own, which was terrible. And then I discovered Mambo and started to use that, and then very quickly onto Joomla. And soon after that, I formed the London User Group, which was a place for developers to ask questions and find out answers. I'm now the Director of Outreach for Joomla, which is the department that deals with marketing, social media, magazine, organizing events, and general outreach. Before that, I worked through the CMS team, the team that looks at making sure that there's not too many bugs when it's released. Google Summer of Code, which is when a massive opportunity for students to join and do a project with Joomla. And we're actually extending that to other systems that will allow you, Google Summer of Docs and anything else that we can to encourage people to come and do some open source software. One of the great things about Joomla is that if you put time in and you work away in a particular area, you often get recognized for that. And very quickly, you'll find that you're running a department or running something with passion, and you can really make a difference. And we're all volunteers in Joomla, and you can really come through the organization and make a difference. I'd like to state that I have used other CMS systems. The reason I use Joomla is only because I think it's the best one for my clients' security, for my ease of use, which is important for me, and for the developer journey that I have to go through. And I've also recently started being my own client. So I'm doing sites that are bringing income that I'm designing, building, not for clients, but for myself. And so a lot of what our first speaker Eric was talking about is really something that I've been going into and making sure that I get right so that it can bring me great rewards. It's not just me that thinks Joomla is amazing. It's been downloaded 135 million times. It's responsible for 2.5% of the CMS market and accounts for some 10% of all business sites. One of the reasons it's so good is the way that it's so easy to set up. And you can get a really fast site that's got great SEO quickly out of the box. And one of the big things that we use nowadays to measure this is Lighthouse. And here is a site with virtually nothing else done to it apart from what I'm going to show you. And here we have great performance, and it wasn't on a Scala hosting server. I'm sure if it was, it would be 100 there. The accessibility is 100, best practice 100 in SEO, and that's out of the box using the Cassiopeia template. So to get to that SEO score straight out of the box, making sure that you don't have to install anything else, what did I do? Well, for those that use Joomla, it's going to be quite a simple run through. In the back end of Joomla, in the administrator area, you have global configurations. And in the global configurations, there's a couple of different panels. There's one panel which has the site meta description, and we used to have a generic infill with a generic description about Joomla there up until Joomla 3, but a lot of people didn't fill it in, so all their sites had Joomla 3 and a description of Joomla 3 as their generic meta description. So with Joomla 4, that's left empty, and if you don't put something in there, you won't get 100%. But as long as you put in something there, and then the next area that you have to fill in, I've put in the content rights as well, but that's not necessarily needed. The other area that you need to switch on is the search engine friendly URLs, put yes to that. And then you need to put in the URL rewriting. And for that, you then go into your configuration and rename a file. So in this case, I'm on a Linux machine server. So I would rename my htaccess.txt file to .htaccess. And it's as simple as that. And after that, I hit save, and that's it. That is all you need to get 100% out of the box with the Joomla website. And that will go through your pages, giving you great results as long as you're constructing this page semantically, and get you in that card game right at the beginning of Eric's talk. So that's the technical SEO part. Now with Joomla 4.1, we've added some newer things. So we've now got the core, we've got a task scheduler. We have child templates, which are a real boon for those developers that are wanting to extend the templates and make overrides and make them look better. And an accessibility checker, which Brian was very heavily involved with. He's done a lot in the core of Joomla 4 and 4.1 and working on 4.2. And the accessibility checker is something I use a lot, and that's in the core. 4.2, which came out, and they're coming out every 6 months at the moment. 4.2 came out just a month or so ago, and that had the keyboard shortcuts, which I'm already starting to get some muscle memory behind and use, and that's really nice to use, and multi-factor authentication, which gives much more security to your site, and it also future-proofs your site so you can use other forms of authentication as new forms come along. 4.3, there's a couple of things. None of these are actually confirmed, but things that could be on the horizon are a cookie manager, SEO and schema tools to help us all, and lots of documentation. There's a real big push by the production department on documentation to help developers so that you can extend Joomla, which is one of the main things that a lot of people do, building your own extensions for those things that you need to. But the core does a lot. So how can you learn more and get involved? Simple. Take a look at joomla.org. Check out the Joomla forum. Join the community. You can email me, outreachdc@opensourcematters.org. And I can add you to a team if you'd like to help contribute, or find a local Joomla user group. I run the London user group, which is the third Tuesday of every month in the evening, but we're online now because of COVID. A lot of them went online as well as having physical presence now. So yeah, join one of those organizations and you will get a lot more information. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Great, Philip. Thank you so much for that. That was a great presentation, and we appreciate the overview of Joomla as well. So again, thank you. Now, before you go, also we have some great questions being submitted. And the one question here is, Philip, I've always used Joomla on my websites, but now I'm going to the dark side and using WordPress. Do you think I should go back on my decision?
I host WordPress sites as well. They're mostly smaller sites and small blogging sites. I think one of the really nice things I find about Joomla is it can extend and go with the life of your site. And I've bidded for a lot of client jobs. And when you've been doing it for a year or so, and you can sit down and chat and say, you know, why did we get the job? The really interesting thing I've found is that the Joomla quotes tended to be a lot cheaper than the WordPress ones for larger sites, because it can get very complex to join all these things up, whereas Drupal and Joomla have a really good underlying API. And I think that that helps you extend and make the larger projects. So I think that's why, although we have a smaller CMS share, we have a much larger for business sites, because as you get to bigger and bigger sites, if you find it's just, I think, easier. And I know a lot of developers that work in both. I know which one they prefer to work with when it's a bigger site, a more complex site. So it depends on how big your site's going to grow.
Great. Thanks again, Philip. We'll see you in just a little while for the Q&A panel. But at this point, I'd now like to introduce our next presenter. And this is Robert Duwitz. Robert is president of Open Source Matters Joomla Foundation. He lives in Germany near the Belgium and Netherlands border. And Robert is a developer working mostly with Joomla, Laravel, and Vue.js. He is involved in the project. He has been involved in the project since Mambo days and has been in many leadership positions over the years. So with that, I will now turn it over to Robert. Welcome.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for inviting me. I will speak a little bit about what's special about Joomla. And some people might know Joomla as an open source project. We don't have a company in our back that comes with big money. We are all doing, as Philip already said, we are all doing this for free. And so everyone can join us and help us to make Joomla better. So I'm the president of Open Source Matters. We are doing the financial part more or less, and the legal part for Joomla. And as you might can think of, we need money, and to do this, even all people work for free. And there are some sponsors in, and Scala Hosting is one of our big sponsors. So thank you for sponsoring the Joomla project. But I want to highlight a little bit more what Phil said, because we all working for free. You can join us and help us. So it's good for your work-life balance. You can do something for fun. The people in the Joomla project are open and friendly. So this is my invite to you to join us and help us to make Joomla the web and maybe the world better. That's all from my side.
Great, Robert. Thank you very much, Robert. Really appreciate that. And again, Robert will also be joining us during the Q&A panel. So let's move on now to our next presenter. And our next presenter is Vlad Georgiev. Vlad is co-founder and CTO of Scala Hosting and author of S-Panel. He has always been passionate about servers and building tools to make server management easy and efficient. With over 20 years of experience, Vlad knows what wants to bring the hosting industry to the next level and make the internet a safer place for everyone. That's why he started building the S-Panel, an all-in-one cloud management platform, which allows every website owner to run their own website in a safe and high-performance environment without technical skills. So with that, I now turn it over to Vlad. Vlad, please go ahead.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Bruce. And hello, everyone. I'm here today to tell you more about the advantages cloud hosting clusters bring to super heavy websites that serve over 100 million visits daily. Does anyone here run such a busy website? I assume most don't, so I'd rather talk about something that's a hot topic for everyone running important website who is worried about speed, SEO, user experience, and anything that would help your website grow. But before optimizing your website for speed, SEO, and better user experience, you need to prepare the foundation for your website to thrive. And that is choosing the right hosting solution, because all your efforts will be simply wasted if your server is going down every now and then, and the performance is not consistent. All your efforts spent on writing relevant content, which is so important, as Eric mentioned earlier, will not bring the desired SEO results due to not choosing the proper hosting solution. So if you are on a mission to grow your website, you should firstly run it in the right hosting environment, which is free of obstacles that may slow down your website or open security issues that may result in a compromise or downtime. And similarly to what Brian mentioned in his presentation about responsible, not responsive, responsible web design, I would say your website needs a responsible hosting environment without barriers, so that any human being in the world may access it and use it, and the website is always fast and secure. Most websites nowadays use shared hosting, which puts tons of barriers and obstacles in front of them, blocking their opportunities to grow. And the needs of websites have drastically changed in the last couple of years. Websites nowadays must be fast, secure, and well optimized 24 hours a day, 365 days per year. Shared hosting doesn't meet those requirements. Speed and security are especially important if you are running an online store, as they will affect not only your SEO ranking, but also the number of purchases you will have at the end of the month. So what is the right hosting solution for an important website? You can get the foundation for your website to thrive by hosting it on the cloud, which brings the guaranteed speed, security, and uptime you're looking for. The cloud became so popular for a reason. Now you'll say, but hosting on the cloud is complicated. It requires technical skills. I don't know how to manage a server. Well, that's why S-Panel was born, an all-in-one cloud management platform allowing every website owner to easily manage their website hosting on the cloud like a pro. And to make it easier to understand, let me illustrate my words with a video.
S-Panel is a powerful cloud management platform, allowing anyone to manage their server with ease. Wait, you never heard the words server management and easy in one sentence before? In that case, deep breath. Choose a server from your favorite provider, and instead of a complex, frustrating, and borderline panic-inducing setup process, get it done with S-Panel. Our engineers will set your server up for you, giving you access to all the server optimization and management tools you need, pre-installed and ready to roll at a click of a button. Monitor your server resources, create, upgrade, suspend, unsuspend individual accounts, and take full control of your server. Working on a project for yourself? sPanel allows you to install WordPress and over 400 additional web applications, host emails, create backups, install SSL certificates, and manage your site like a pro. But if you're an admin or a web studio, dazzle your customers with some flair by removing the sPanel logo. Psst, we won't mind. Generate usage reports or allow us to manage your customers through our 24/7, 365 days a year support. How did sPanel get to be so great? Well, it was built by you, all of you. Every piece of sPanel is developed based on the public feature requests at features.spanel.io. So join over 10,000 businesses already using sPanel and manage your server with ease. Like I said at the beginning,
Thank you very much, Vlad. I greatly appreciate it. And right now, I am going to ask that we bring our panelists back onto our screen, and we can start to begin our Q&A session with everyone. We have a number of questions that have been submitted, so it's an exciting time right now. And again, I will position some of these questions to a particular panelist, but at the same time, I encourage the other ones to kind of chime in and have any responses to some of the questions. So let's bring you all on screen here and let's get to some of our initial questions. Actually, this one came up for Eric initially. And Eric, the question is, if relevance and quality are the most important ranking factors, how come it seems that when I make tech SEO changes that I can see improvements in rankings and traffic?
Yeah, it's a great question. Basically, the reason what's happened there is you have the content and some tech SEO limitation on the site has prevented Google from finding it, seeing how important it is based on how you link to it on your site. Pages that are linked high up on the site as opposed to many clicks down or seen as more important, and or understanding it. So when you make that technical SEO change, suddenly Google is able to find that content more easily, and for that reason it rises in the rankings. So it's still back to your tech SEO wasn't quite right. You didn't pay the entry fee to compete, or you didn't pay the full entry fee. Once you did, the content raised up.
Great, thank you. The next question is, and I'm going to open this up to the panel. Due to Google improvement ability to read pages and decide how to index them, are meta tags like keywords still relevant for SEO today? And actually, I'll open that up to the team here. Brian?
Well, yeah, I think it comes down to what Eric said right at the beginning of his talk, that the content is the most important thing, and the authority of the people authoring the content. For me, meta tags, keywords, things like that are additional things that you can do, but the value of the return, the time invested, is small compared to the time that you might spend writing the great content in the first place.
In fact,
Yeah,
I was going to say in Joomla 4, we actually don't put the keywords out. We put the meta description, but we don't put the keywords out in the page. But one of the really nice things that I came across was a little module where if you do put the keywords in, it matches articles that have similar keywords. So you can have you might also be interested in at the bottom of the article, and it brings you back relevant articles which are interlinking via the keywords. So people might actually then stay on the site a little bit longer. And as Eric was saying earlier about in article linking, that is a nice little system to help you with that.
Right. So to be specific in terms of the meta descriptions tag for keywords, the keyword meta keywords tag, Google ignores it. They made that clear many years ago. They do pay attention to the meta description tag, and it may show up in the search results as the description for your page. And in which case, it doesn't actually impact your rankings, but it can impact the click-through rate because if you have a good description, it sounds more compelling than the other search results up, below it, above it and below it. Then you might entice the click. But the meta keywords tag is ignored by Google. But to Philip's point, it doesn't mean that it couldn't have uses to other tools that might do something with that tag. And also just to agree with Brian, focusing on the content quality is absolutely job number one.
Great, thank you. Our next question, with a expletive of please, what would be the best format HTML elements for SEO as part number list, which is just part number and single line description? I'm reading the question. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me repeat it one more time. What would be the best format HTML elements for SEO of part number list, which has just part number and single line description?
So I'll give the short answer is probably an unordered list element is probably what you would want to use. You could make an argument for an ordered list element, but I would go in those directions for showing a long list of part numbers with just a short description. But a more general answer to the question is for the kinds of things that you think that this list might trigger in the Google search results, what might cause it to show up in the Google search results. What I would do is typically, I would go look at what Google is currently ranking today and see what is the most common sorts of elements that they're using. So if you find, for example, that they used paragraph tags instead of ordered or unordered lists, then okay, then you go with the paragraph tags. But my bet in this case is it's probably UL or OL tags.
I've been seeing quite a lot of results with H2s being picked up by Google and then Google presenting them as a list themselves. Yes. And when you go to the page, you look and there's no ordered list or unordered list. It's actually all the H2 headings that Google's picked out and made a relevant list. And that seems to be a trend that I've noticed and I've been using in some of the stuff I've been writing.
But that's bad.
Yes.
But that's bad HTML markup, and it's not particularly great for accessibility to present your users with this huge long list of headings to nothing.
No, Brian. No, Brian. It's where you've got headings and then description and headings and stuff.
I'm answering the question, not the which is just that it's a list.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd be tempted actually not to use an unordered or an ordered list, but to use a definitions list in this case, because in this case we've got two parts of the list. We've got the term, which is in this case the part number, and we've got the description of the product of the parts. So I'd probably look at using a definitions list first, but an unordered list is probably a very close alternative.
So I like the accessibility point too here that you made, Brian, which is when you look at how you decide to structure your HTML document, you really want to get back to thinking about what you would do if you were writing a physical book, right? You have headings and chapters and section headings and subheadings and you do various things. And when you think about it in a book context, you don't confuse yourself with SEO. You just do what makes it a good experience for users. And that's ultimately a really good guiding principle for what you do from an SEO perspective with how you structure your HTML.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for not only the question from the audience, but also a great response and dialogue between the panelists. Thank you. Our next question, actually, I'm going to give to Vlad. And Vlad, the question is, how can I host a website with 100 million daily visits on SPanel?
Well, that's an interesting question. Actually, that's what I was thinking to talk about because we did a really huge project for with the government of the Philippines related to the presidential elections that were run there a couple of months ago. Basically, they needed a system online to serve all their people that are involved in the elections, to learn how to use the system, the voting systems, and so on. It had to be done online, and those people that had to be trained were about 300,000, and they needed a solution that can scale quickly. Basically, at the peak time, the system was serving about 100 million of visits daily, and basically the experience with them let us build that functionality in SPanel, which now allowed our company to be able to offer small businesses, because it's really affordable, to have clusters serving a huge amount of visitors. Basically, with SPanel, we have the tools in the API and the backend that allow us to build clusters with multiple load balancers, multiple web servers, multiple database servers, with also caching servers and many types of application servers required for the project. But each cluster is unique. There isn't two clusters that are the same, so there isn't a quick answer here to say this is how you host a website with 200 millions of visits daily, or whatever number of visits. Each project is unique, and it has to be planned, designed, and managed in its unique way to fit the needs of the project. Great. So there isn't a quick answer here.
Great. Well, thank you for that.
I was just going to say, Brian's talk actually comes hand in hand with this one, because as I'm someone who hosts and builds and everything, I know that if I can make fast, light pages, then my server isn't being as affected. So if you're making the sort of sites that Brian was talking about, and making sure the images are as optimized as possible and the pages have a much lower load, then you'll be able to use the infrastructure. It will be more responsive, and you won't need as much expense in hardware. And I know from my own experience, I've used some of the Scala hosting, and it's fast. So if you've got a faster site and you put it on there, you're going to get a really good response. So yeah, it's not just the hardware, and you've got to have the good hardware, but it's also the good design, as Brian was talking about.
Great, thank you very much. Actually, this next question is actually going to be targeted to Philip. The attendee asks, I'm starting a new online e-commerce store using WordPress, as Joomla was a bit more than the budget assigned. My question is, what is the real difference between both? And he has in parentheses, keeping in mind that I just started in the designing field.
Okay, well, Joomla's free, so that's interesting. So, and most of the shop solutions I know for Joomla are not expensive. We're talking 40, 50 pounds. So I'm not sure where the expense was coming in, unless it was a developer that was quoting them. And if that's the case, one of the things you can do is we've got resource directories on joomla.org. We've got a directory of developers who are all ones that have gone through a process, and they produce really good sites. So it might be worth looking around at some of the people that have been doing sites and getting some other quotes. But that's surprising, because it's not the usual way around. As I say, Joomla itself is free. You can download it, try it out for free.
And there are also e-commerce applications for Joomla which are free as well.
Yes,
that costs some money. But to answer the question about what is a fundamental difference between Joomla and WordPress, it comes down to our history and our architecture. And WordPress is very much based coming from its blog platform, its blog origins. So it is a page-based system. So everything is based around the page. It's one page per piece of content. Joomla, coming from Mambo before it, is coming from a true content management approach. So we like to call it a menu-based approach, but you can think of it that there is no such thing as a page in Joomla. The page doesn't exist until the user clicks on the link. And when they click on the link, it builds the page dynamically at that point from various different settings, which actually makes things a lot faster, because you're not building a page, you're only building your contents each time. You're not having to rebuild everything else. But that difference between Joomla and WordPress at a fundamental level is a difference between a page builder and a more menu structured system, which allows you to, for something like an e-commerce site, to expand your offering far quicker, because you're only building the product, you're not building the page.
No, it's a great difference.
It allows you to expand it into other things as well. So a lot of the e-commerce solutions in Joomla actually use articles as their basis, and then you can use the images that you've got in those for a gallery, for many other things. So you're dynamically creating lots of different ways of viewing stuff from your initial work. So again, if it's a very simple blog, then there's not that big divergence. But as Brian is explaining, as you get bigger, so you can do so much more so quickly.
Great, thank you both very much for that. That's a great response and a very clear differentiation between the two platforms. Thank you. Back to Vlad. Vlad, the next question we have submitted is, how is S-Panel different from other server management solutions such as cPanel?
Well, I would say the core difference is that S-Panel is optimized for website owners. And here, this is really related to what Brian presented today about the responsible web design. Basically, I would say S-Panel is the responsible cloud management platform, because the features in there are features for the webmasters, for the website owners, and not for hosting companies and companies in the middle between the website owner and the company selling the the service. Basically, all new features in S-Panel are built based on what users need. And of course, the system at features.spanel.io, where everyone can vote, and depending on the votes, we develop the features people need and not the features we decide that have to be developed. That's one thing. Another thing, that S-Panel always has the website owner's interest as a core priority. And that's why S-Panel was born. It was born to help website owners run their websites in a safe and high performance environment, which, as I mentioned in my presentation, is the foundation for any website to thrive. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Brian, if you're going to build if you're going to build a new website, what would be the very first thing you would do?
Get out a pen and a piece of paper and actually plan my website using pen and paper before I even start to do anything, because that's what I see so often is someone wants a website and they go online and they're looking for a theme or a template, and they grab that and they install that in their platform of choice, and then they have to try and create content that matches the original design of the theme, which wasn't what they wanted. You know, you end up with so much rubbish on the site. So start with a pen and a piece of paper and just sketch out, just very basic. What do I want on this page? Okay, what else do I want? If I have a menu across the top, what happens when I click on it? What's the user going to see? And you start with that first. It's called building inside out. Yeah, so you're building the content before you're building what it looks like.
And pretty much like a schematic, Brian, like the boxes of content.
Yeah, really, really basic. I mean, really, really basic. I've not got one within reach. Oh, I have. So I don't know if this will work, but I've got designs.
Because while you're looking for that, I know I use programs.
I'll find the right book at the right time.
I use a program called Lucid Chart. There's other ones out there. Very simple to kind of just start to block out, move your positions around, connect them a little bit and so forth. But to your point, Brian, is to really put it on paper to really understand what content you want and how you want people to engage with your site.
Yeah.
Right. I 100% agree, by the way. It's like, figure out what you're going to try to do and what you're trying to build before you start building it.
Yep. Yep.
And by the way, that's how, by the way, just to mention anything, because I'm laughing here, that's the way how SPanel was started. It's basically drafting with a pen and paper what it needs to have so that people, especially webmasters and website owners, have everything they need to manage their website hosting.
Great. Eric, next question was submitted for you. Google launched their helpful content update just recently. How does this impact what you had to say about content's importance?
So for those who don't know, the Google helpful content update was something where Google released an algorithm just a few weeks ago. And what they told us is that it was going to go out and punish content that was developed exclusively for SEO purposes, or to invert that, content that was not developed with the user-first mentality in mind. So it's just really important to understand. It gets back to, similar to my other answer, that you really don't want to just spew content out there and look up a million search phrases and machine generate a whole bunch of crap across, across all those search phrases and publish it. You have to be thoughtful. And now I'm going to go similar to what Brian just said. Before you start a piece of content, make sure, first of all, it's a subject matter expert that's creating it. And then be thoughtful about what you're going to try to accomplish with the content. Decide that before you launch off into creating it, and make sure that you're creating really good stuff. So the helpful content update is actually very consistent with the advice that I was sharing in terms of it underscores the need to invest in how you approach your content.
In Joomla London, we used to, and over the years in the user groups, we've had people talking about black hat and white hat, and some people sitting very close to the wind, trying to optimize to the nth degree. And what usually happens is when Google does a big update, they're the ones that come in crying because they've literally tried to artificially get as close as they can to get as much out. Whereas those that have just written good content and done it, thoughtfully, and everything that Eric has been saying, they tend to not be touched by the big algorithm changes in any way, shape, or form as badly as those that are sailing close to the wind. So, link farms, all these things that you can see and people say, pay for and all that, I just don't go near them. I've never gone near them. And, I've got several sites which are the biggest in their field. And the reason is we taught them to write really good content. And a lovely one of mine's a wine merchant. And, he started pretty small. He had a shop that went bust. So I said, go online. He was a great character. And I showed him how to write it. And he went off and he wrote really good articles for each of his wines. Started with 300. He's got 3,000 now. And he soon got complaints from the vineyards and the wine merchants that he was above them in Google ranking because he'd written really nice stories about the farmers, about the wine, stuff that people wanted to read. And because people wanted to read, Google notices that and goes, "Okay, we're going to put you up for that term." The term happens to be the name of the wine.
That's right.
So he was above the people that were producing the wine just on his shop and does really well now.
That's great.
Which leads to some easy advice for those wine sites. I mean, the wine vineyard sites.
Yeah. It's also really good because it's just stressing once again that content is king. And if anything, every time Google does an update, as Philip said, you're going to get these people who have been selling SEO services that are of a questionable nature, who are then crying and want to charge you again. And if anything, your site will go down every time there's an update. Whereas those people who wrote great content, at worst, their sites are going to stay the same ranking, but more likely, they're actually going to go up in rank because they're doing it the right way. And Google tries it. It's not evil. It tries its best to serve the users the best content. That's what it's trying to do. So it works. The better your content, the more traffic you'll get, and your business, necessarily if it's a business site, will grow. And you don't need to worry about the Google algorithm updates.
Right.
Now, just to be respectful of people's time, we have time for about 2 more questions, even though we've had a number of other ones submitted. And for those who we don't get to your questions, we will respond back to them after the conference. This conference is over. But the next question actually is also for Philip. When will the next in-person event, such as the Joomla World Conference, take place?
Okay, well, I'd bring Robert in on this as well, because one of the Joomla always had Joomla World Conference, and there's another thing which is more independent, which is J and Beyond. J and Beyond was more designed at developers, and I used to go to them, learn so much. And the World Conference is more for content makers and administrators and that. And now we haven't had one because of COVID, but we're looking to see if we could get one about this time next year. So we're in the early days of stages of planning it. We haven't got a venue yet, but we're hoping that within the next year we will have an in-person event. But there's loads of user groups. But maybe Robert wants to say something about J and Beyond.
Yeah, we're also looking for next year, probably in May or April. Something we also not really finished with it. We had planned to do something in Lisbon, but this doesn't went really well. So we are still looking into this, and hopefully we can give news. Yeah, probably 1 or 2 months. That we know where it is and when it is exactly.
Great.
I think with the World Conference, we're going to try and make it, we're going to use the experience of COVID and everything going online and see if we can actually have a couple of hubs and centers that are actually going to be in different areas. So we don't have to dart around the planet, because Joomla is, apart from Antarctica, there's someone in every continent. And so it would be great to have a bigger reach.
To correct you, I found a website in Antarctica. One of the Antarctic research stations uses Joomla. So
excellent. We've got it.
They have a bit of difficulty getting updates, but they do run a Joomla website.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Actually, our next question for Vlad. What are the exact advantages of hosting on the cloud compared to shared hosting?
Oh, such a question. It's a long answer, but With shared hosting, basically it's mainly disadvantages, and the only advantage is price. While on the cloud, that's why it became so popular, because it's effective. You pay as much as you use, and you have many advantages, because with hosting your website on the cloud, you can have scalability, speed, consistency. Consistency is one of the hugest advantages for hosting it on the cloud. And with that consistency, you get paid for your SEO efforts, for writing that relevant and nice content. Because if you don't have your website loading fast all the time, or even going down from time to time, then your SEO efforts and writing relevant content won't be paid. You won't get good ranking, and also your website visitors will leave. Shared hosting is a thing from the past with fixed plans and no scalability, while the cloud is the future. That's it.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of you for not only your presentations, but taking the past 15, 20 minutes to have this discussion and answering the questions from our audience. Like I said, we still have a number of questions that have been submitted, and we'll do our best to respond to those after the conference is over. So with that, again, thanks to all the panelists again, and to all of you for participating and listening to today's program. If you should have any questions for any of our panelists or anything to follow up, please direct those to Vlad at Scala Hosting, and he'll be glad to triage those out to our appropriate presenters for today. But again, I want to thank you all very much for participating, and this does conclude today's program.